Every American driver is about to be affected by a set of law changes most people haven't heard about yet. State legislatures and transportation agencies have advanced sweeping updates to traffic codes that apply broadly, not just to repeat offenders or high-risk drivers. The reach of these changes means ordinary commuting decisions are now tied to legal consequences many drivers never anticipated. February 2026 quietly triggers one of the biggest crackdowns on everyday driving behavior in decades. Multiple states have aligned enforcement start dates around this period, activating statutes that were passed earlier with little attention. Smash that subscribe button right now, because missing this information could be an expensive mistake. Once active, these laws shift routine driving from a low-risk activity into a tightly regulated legal exposure. 10 new driving laws are set to reshape how you drive, what you pay, and what happens if you slip up once. The measures range from stricter penalty thresholds to expanded definitions of violations, altering both enforcement and financial liability. Together, they represent a structural change in how states manage driver compliance. These changes won't feel theoretical when the fines hit your mailbox or your insurance bill spikes. Enforcement mechanisms are designed to trigger automatic reporting to insurers and state databases, accelerating the cost impact. What used to be a manageable ticket can now ripple through household budgets. State governments are rewriting driving rules in ways that could cost millions of drivers thousands of dollars. Revenue projections tied to these laws show significant increases in collected fines and fees. Critics argue that the financial burden will fall disproportionately on middle-income drivers with no history of serious violations. What used to be minor traffic mistakes are about to carry consequences that last for years. New point systems and extended record retention periods mean a single citation can follow a driver far longer than before. The long tail of these penalties reshapes risk for even cautious motorists. Most drivers won't realize what changed until it's already too late. Public education campaigns have lagged behind legislative action, leaving gaps in awareness. Enforcement, however, will not pause for misunderstanding. A nationwide shift in traffic enforcement is unfolding with almost no public warning. Policy coordination among states has accelerated quietly through transportation councils and federal grant incentives. The result is a broad enforcement posture change that appears sudden only because it was largely unseen. Lawmakers say it's about safety, but drivers are about to feel it in their wallets. Official statements emphasize accident reduction, yet fiscal analyses show fines and fees as a major outcome. For drivers, safety rhetoric does little to offset rising costs. The rules you learned when you got your license may no longer protect you. Many statutes override long-standing assumptions embedded in driver education programs. Compliance now requires relearning behaviors once considered acceptable. Several states are enforcing penalties that are dramatically harsher than anything seen before. Mandatory minimum fines and reduced judicial discretion limit opportunities for leniency. Courts are increasingly bound by preset consequences. Actions that were legal last year could soon result in fines, points, or license suspension. Transitional clauses in new laws eliminate grandfathering for common behaviors. Drivers crossing state lines may face unexpected enforcement gaps. Insurance companies are already preparing for what these laws will trigger next. Actuarial models have been updated to reflect higher citation frequency and severity. Premium adjustments are expected to follow quickly. Automated enforcement is expanding faster than most communities can track. Camera systems and sensor-based monitoring are being deployed through vendor contracts rather than public debate. These systems operate continuously, removing human judgment from the process. One missed detail in these new rules could follow you financially for years. Administrative penalties often cascade into insurance, employment, and credit consequences. The margin for oversight error has narrowed sharply. Parents, commuters, gig drivers, no one is exempt from what's coming. The laws apply uniformly across personal, commercial, and app-based driving. Frequency of driving now directly correlates with exposure risk. Some of these laws are being implemented faster than drivers can adapt. Grace periods are minimal or non-existent, emphasizing immediate compliance. Education is largely left to drivers to pursue independently. The definition of reckless driving is about to widen in ways that surprise even careful drivers. Speed thresholds, lane behavior, and device interaction are being reclassified. Conduct once seen as borderline now carries serious labels. States are no longer relying on warnings, they're relying on penalties. Warning programs have been phased out in favor of citation-first enforcement. The shift reflects a policy decision to prioritize deterrence through cost. The margin for error behind the wheel is shrinking nationwide. Tolerance levels for speed, distraction, and impairment are tightening simultaneously. Drivers must operate with near constant compliance awareness. Cell phone use, even momentary, is about to carry consequences that escalate fast. Escalation clauses increase penalties for repeat detection regardless of time gaps. Technology makes momentary use easier to prove. Traffic cameras are multiplying, and they don't issue warnings. Automated systems generate citations without interaction or discretion. Appeals often hinge on technical challenges rather than context. The days of it was just a small mistake are effectively over. Policy language now treats minor infractions as indicators of risk. Accumulation, not severity, drives punishment. Several penalties now extend far beyond the ticket itself. Administrative fees, mandatory courses, and monitoring requirements add layers of cost. Compliance becomes an ongoing obligation. What looks like a one-time fine can trigger years of higher insurance costs. Insurers treat new violations as predictive risk markers. The financial impact compounds long after the citation is paid. Electric vehicle owners are discovering new fees they never expected to pay. Road use charges and registration adjustments target EV adoption gaps in fuel taxes. These fees alter the cost calculus of ownership. Long-standing assumptions about DUI limits are being challenged state by state. Some jurisdictions are lowering thresholds or adding impairment presumptions. Enforcement discretion is narrowing accordingly. A single drink may soon carry legal risks many drivers don't anticipate. Zero-tolerance expansions affect broader age and license categories. The legal definition of impairment is shifting. License renewals are becoming more demanding, especially for older drivers. Vision, reaction, and knowledge testing requirements are expanding. Renewal is increasingly treated as recertification. Some states are testing requirements that could become national standards. Pilot programs funded by federal grants are closely watched. Successful models often spread quickly. These changes aren't isolated. They're coordinated across dozens of jurisdictions. Model legislation and shared enforcement technology drive alignment. Drivers experience this as sudden uniformity. Law enforcement agencies are being given broader authority and fewer exceptions. Statutory language limits officer discretion to downgrade offenses. Authority now flows from code, not context. The legal system is shifting toward punishment over discretion. Mandatory penalties constrain judicial flexibility. Outcomes are more predictable, but often harsher. Drivers who never considered themselves high risk are now in the crosshairs. Risk profiles have been recalibrated to include common behaviors. Ordinary driving patterns are newly scrutinized. Small violations are being reclassified with serious legal weight. Administrative law changes elevate penalties without criminal trials. The impact, however, feels punitive. Many of these policies were passed with little public debate. Legislative sessions moved quickly, often bundling measures into larger bills. Public awareness followed passage, not deliberation. Cities are relying more heavily on fines as a revenue source. Budget shortfalls have increased dependence on traffic enforcement income. Critics warn of perverse incentives. Technology is now enforcing laws faster than humans ever could. Automated systems process violations at scale. Speed and volume redefine enforcement norms. What happens after a traffic stop is about to change dramatically. Data sharing between agencies accelerates follow-up actions. Resolution timelines are shortened. These rules don't just affect drivers, they affect families and household budgets. Transportation costs now include compliance risk. Financial planning must account for enforcement exposure. Teen drivers are facing restrictions that reshape how independence begins. Graduated licensing phases are lengthening. Supervision requirements extend further into adolescence. Parents may be surprised by how limited young drivers' privileges become. Night driving, passenger limits, and device restrictions are tightened. Enforcement applies to guardians as well. Driving without insurance now carries penalties that rival criminal offenses. Civil fines escalate rapidly into license suspension and vehicle seizure. Compliance gaps close quickly. Vehicle impoundment is becoming a routine enforcement tool, not a last resort. Statutes authorize seizure for administrative violations. Recovery costs add significant burden. Even being near certain driving activities can now carry legal risk. Expanded liability provisions implicate owners and passengers. Proximity can equal responsibility. The line between civil violation and criminal charge is narrowing. Repeat administrative offenses trigger criminal escalation. Legal exposure intensifies over time. States say these laws save lives, but the financial fallout is real. Safety data is cited alongside revenue growth. Drivers experience both simultaneously. Once these rules take effect, ignorance won't be a defense. Statutory language explicitly removes knowledge requirements. Responsibility is presumed. The cost of driving legally is increasing across the board. Fees, compliance measures, and enforcement combine to raise baseline expenses. Driving becomes a more regulated utility. Many drivers won't realize they're non-compliant until enforcement kicks in. Automated detection flags violations instantly. Notification follows enforcement, not warning. These changes represent one of the most aggressive traffic policy shifts in modern history. The scale and coordination are unprecedented. Daily driving is being redefined. What's being framed as safety reform is also a massive compliance overhaul. Administrative systems expand alongside enforcement. Compliance becomes continuous. The burden of adjustment is falling squarely on everyday drivers. Infrastructure and education lag behind enforcement. Adaptation costs are personal. Transportation policy is becoming one of the most expensive areas of daily life. Compliance costs rival fuel and maintenance. Driving budgets are under pressure. This is not a future issue. It's an operational change already in motion. Systems are live and penalties authorized. The transition period is effectively over. Some states are moving faster than federal guidance ever anticipated. Local statutes outpace national standards. Uniformity gives way to experimentation. The penalties are clear, the timelines are set, and the impact is unavoidable. Statutes specify enforcement without ambiguity. Compliance is mandatory. Drivers who don't prepare will pay more than they expect. Lack of awareness multiplies costs. Preparation now means survival. These laws don't arrive with sirens, but their effects are immediate. Enforcement is quiet, but relentless. Consequences accumulate quickly. If you drive in America, this is information you cannot afford to miss. The legal landscape has changed beneath routine behavior. Awareness is now a form of protection.